Hi guys, my name is Brady. My topic is autonomous cars. So for those of you who don't know, an autonomous car is just a car that can drive itself without any human input at all. So before I start, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. In 1925, Houdini Radio Control made the first autonomous car. It doesn't fit my definition, which is why I say autonomous car. Essentially, it was a car followed by another car that received radio signals from the driver of the other car. So it was really just a really big toy remote control car. And my main claim is that the recreational use of autonomous cars will not be a viable method of transportation in our lifetime. My argument will be supported by the three following claims: that autonomous cars are unreliable and therefore dangerous. People don't trust their lives with autonomous cars, and the technology actually already exists, but it can't be implemented. All right, so for my first one, autonomous cars are unreliable and therefore dangerous. In a report done by the California DMV on February 14th, Google's autonomous car caused an accident with a bus. So not only did it get in an accident with a bus, it actually turned into the side of a bus that it didn't sense was there. This just goes to show that the technology that we have now, it's made in such a way so that autonomous cars aren't foolproof. Like they really still need a human operator to be viable. Cars also can't communicate the same way people do, and even if they could, they wouldn't be able to predict the actions of those people that don't have autonomous cars. So, as you all know, as long as all you drive, I assume, people, if they're at a stop sign and they tie when they get there, will wave someone else across if they aren't sure. So an autonomous car wouldn't be able to sense that. And according to Fortune.com, self-driving cars are rear-ended 50% more of the time than traditional vehicles. So it's not necessarily that the autonomous cars are at fault for that, but they can't get out of the way the same way a person can if they're about to be rear-ended. All right, my second claim, or second supporting claim, people don't trust autonomous cars with their lives. Sorry. A study by the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, over half the people asked about autonomous cars expressed unease. And from the same source, over 60% of people expressed their comfortability of having their kids transported in an autonomous car at or under a 3 out of 5. So that goes to show that parents with children, even if they say they would get in the car themselves, they wouldn't trust the car to transport their children places. And if accidents do happen with autonomous cars, who's at fault? Because really it's not fair to the owner to blame them for the accident, because it is the company's fault for releasing a program that doesn't work that's supposed to drive a car. But if that's the case and the company that designed the car is to blame, then they almost instantly go bankrupt just due to all the accidents. All right, and my third supporting claim, that technology exists but it can't be implemented. According to Autoblog.com, Google's vehicles alone reported 272 malfunctions in the span of 14 months, while 6 other companies combined reported thousands of failures within the same time span. So this just shows that the technology isn't fully developed. It exists, but it doesn't really work the way it should. And according to Reuters.com, 65% of the roads in the US are in poor condition. And that's pretty irrelevant, because if you think about it, the way an autonomous car should in theory work is they sense the lines in the road, and that's how they stay in the lane. I know personally my car does that. It doesn't drive itself, but my car will do that. It will tell me if I'm exiting my lane without using a blinker. And further inconsistencies among states, such as traffic signal orientation, are another thing that hinders the performance of these autonomous cars. So I'm not sure how many of you have ever been out of state or in a place like this, but my best friend lives in El Paso, Texas, and there, instead of the traffic signals being vertical, they're all horizontal. So if a car that was built and designed here in California were to go to Texas, it wouldn't be able to read the traffic signals, and that prevents pretty much the entire car from functioning properly. All right, so in summary, autonomous cars will never be a viable method of transportation just because they are unreliable, and because of that, they're dangerous. People don't trust autonomous cars, and technology exists, but it can't be implemented. Thank you.
All right, Brady, the proposition is clearly identified, although you've got a negative term in the proposition, so that's a little complicated. There are also negative terms in the secondary claims also, so you want to be careful about the wording on those particular points. There's a good preview, though, that tells us what the supporting structure is going to be. The signposting on those points is pretty clear, so that's easy to follow. You give an explanation on each point as to what it is you're talking about, although I have to say that the first part of part number 3 sounds almost exactly like material that you would present under the first supporting claim. So I think there is probably a distinction, but it needs to be a little bit clearer. Like I said, the transitions between those points are not always smooth, but they are clear, and so it's easy to follow. Nobody's going to get lost listening to your argument. The evidence that you present is pretty solid. You've got good examples. You give sources for most of your information. There's some statistical information about how the public feels about these things and the risk factors that they are involved with. There was one reference to an example early on, and then at the end you've got kind of a hypothetical example that you're talking about. I did need some factual data that suggests that these autonomous cars that are being developed can't read traffic signals that are vertical as opposed to horizontal, or horizontal as opposed to vertical. That seems to be a presupposition that hasn't been demonstrated. I'm not even sure that they look at the signals. I assume that there's some kind of radio frequency that they're responding to. So I'm not sure why it would matter what order whether it's up or down, it would matter. Maybe there is a reason that that's the case, but if that's true, then you need to explain it. The idea that there are a lot of bugs in the system, I think that's good. In the proposition, it says the recreational use, and I'm not exactly sure why you're focusing on recreational use, because it seems to me like most people would be using these for practical commuting purposes more than they would be using it for recreation. The recreation, especially if you're going off-road, that doesn't necessarily work very well. But if you're just moving through traffic on a daily basis, like you were talking about the example of sticking your kids in the car and sending them off to school, and the car is just going to drop them off, will you stay at home and have your coffee? Man, I could use that. Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't get in the car, but I'd put my kids in the car in an instant. There you go. All right, thank you.